TUK by George Adams. Continued. Chapter 9. Larry saved me. I told him what we had in mind when the ransom instructions arrived, and he had said he would keep in contact but at a distance. He was now in his small Japanese imitation Land Rover just down the road in front of the American Club, pretending to be waiting for someone. The day Larry counts American Club members as his friends will be some day indeed. The black minivan had done a fast reverse and headed towards the Shaoqiwan end of the bridge. We stood as much chance of finding it as of winning the Mark 6 lottery without a ticket. We drove that direction now out of a sense of loyalty or shock or whatever you do feel when your client gets wasted, which we sadly and somewhat shamefully discovered isn't all that much in the early morning, and probably wouldn't be any other time of day. You're just grateful someone else got it and you didn't, and that's the sad truth. We telephoned the ambulance, as most people do, when really the meat wagon is what you need. Some poor emergency attendant would be up to his thighs in pure cold TAM water, feeling for a pulse where there couldn't be one, being peered at by a swarm of local law, all in the headless chicken mode they switch to when anything disastrous or dirty happens. Certainly you wouldn't be able to get across the bridge until the morning, and probably not even then. We'd also, out of a sense of cockeyed duty, reported the man chained up in the hiker's hut. We supposed Alex's car would be found at much the same time, but probably well before. It was, after all, cute, red, shiny, and hard to miss. "Murder day, Trelford, the mortician's friend," said Larry. "Just follow him around and inform the coroner. Keep the wagon's engine running." So, he was our client. Nothing definite ties him to us much. We're in the clear. Keep saying that. It might just come true. He looked kind of funny behind the wheel of such a silly little car, but I didn't say so. We took the left turn at the end of Taitam Road and drove down the steep bank into the grim streets of Shaoqiwan and Saiwan. Ho! Another 7-Eleven had opened opposite another Circle K. Another foot and body and anything else if you asked for it massage centre had sprung up on another first floor, and another set of buildings was being cleared, demolished, and turned into bijou residences with shopping mall and fitness centre en suite. The streets were still buzzing with oversized cars, empty buses, speeding taxis, gas-guzzling minivans, clueless shoppers, dumpster divers, cardboard scavengers, shuffling vagrants, and a few bizarrely dressed mainlanders on a spree. There were the same occasional children on errands to somewhere or just hanging around in McDonald's until their parents grew tired of TVB or their mahjong game and remembered they had children. The food hawkers at the junctions were serving curried fish balls and barbecued squid sticks. Soon the bright pencil towers of Cornhill and Taiku were before us on both sides, a cold, savage and treeless metroland where people thought they were getting ahead with life at long last on the 25-year mortgage plan. "Oh, for God's sake, let's get a drink," I said at last as we approached Quarry Bay. "I've had enough of the city of life for one night." Tong Chong Street was a favoured hangout for the journalist and media crowd. The bars and restaurants had groups of foreigners, but more often sad expat loners seeking inspiration and commiseration in the bottom of a glass. There were yesterday's papers in the bar, and I glimpsed a picture of Mrs. Chow and friends preparing for an election they believed they had a very, very good chance of winning. It was hard to know why. After all, they were against democracy, against a fair share for all, and against a welfare state. Perhaps everyone was, deep down. "How do they do it?" I asked Larry, who had installed himself behind a larger-than-life glass of red wine. "They seem to have all the wrong policies." "But they do get the vote out. Vans, electoral rolls, signing up the old and the feeble and the frightened and the bigoted. Most Hong Kong people are too lazy to register and too lazy to vote. They like to march, though, if the weather's nice and they feel disgruntled. But the economy is on the up and up again, no different from anywhere else, I suppose. People in Britain at least used to fight for their rights. Lots of them still do." Blair finished all that. Fitted carpet, central heating, EasyJet holidays, cheap lager, Tesco Prosecco, lots of allowances to keep the unemployable off the streets and out of your living room with a jemmy in their hand. More persuasive and more effective than socialism, wouldn't you say? Cheers. I think we're in a real mess right now. I'm frightened, actually. I think this could be it. I can just see the headline, "Former barrister found dead in doorway." What's your theory? Well, addressing ourselves strictly to the facts, it looks like a cover-up of a murder or a manslaughter. Mrs. Chow's alarm bell started ringing when she got the email. She thought you would either be a good fall guy for the job, or you would actually find Adeline before she could. She couldn't lose either way. She didn't want to involve a local firm, as the news would get out to everyone that way, and scandal of any kind is what she and her friends really can't use at the moment. Or any moment. Why they staged this trap to kill Mr. Sung Jr. is a mystery to me. Of course, he knew that Adeline had killed Mr. Sung, or that she had claimed to do so, but it does seem a little heavy-handed. It would have been much better to get him to take the blame or set him up for the crime and leave it at that. Unless they were overtaken by events. Such as? The police seem to have cast iron evidence that he actually was murdered. That didn't seem all that obvious to me when I saw the corpse. All I had to go on was Junior's strange behaviour. I believe young Alex's story now, though. I think they really did have an argument and he pushed him and that he was as scared as hell. I think that's how he persuaded Adeline to take the blame. He was a pretty hopeless kind of person. Whereas she, well, I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. She scares me. So you think Sung Sr. wasn't killed by a fall or a push? No, he wasn't. And I want you to find out how it was done, and as fast as you can. When we know how he was killed, we might find out why Alex was killed. At the moment, we're seeing a picture, but it's the wrong picture. He got back into his jeepette and went in search of elucidation in the police haunts he knew about. I walked down Tong Chong Street with the chill of autumn or early winter upon me, I wasn't sure which. A relative chill, because Hong Kong is never really cold. I felt chop-soiled, worn and thin. There was a McDonald's open, of course, and I ate a double cheeseburger without much interest and without much sensation. It's the perfect food for thinking, as nothing much in the way of a disturbing sensation gets in the way. But I wasn't thinking all that much. I was still in a kind of shock. Images from the last 2 days, and especially the last 2 hours, kept coming back to me. Memories of Junior in his dressing gown. Memories of Junior looking pale and haggard and as frightened as a rabbit at the wheel of his car. And then his innocent, nonchalant, unknowing march towards death. How did it feel to be tossed into the air and feel that bounce against Sir Henry May's granite bricks? It sounded as good a way to go as any. This was no time to be sentimental about a young man gone. He wasn't extremely heroic, and he wasn't supremely likable. But who was in Hong Kong? A town with the most of everything and the best of nothing. I flagged down a taxi and felt the night upon me, harsher than before, and felt a million lives crowding in around me, lives of mind-numbing work, cable TV, air conditioning, vague hopes and short-term satisfactions. I got out in Hennessy Road in Wanchai, where you can always find a welcome if your wallet is even quarter way full. The girls stood in pairs at the junctions and at the entrances to the bars, eagerly looking for their marks under the gaudy signs, which were parodies of amorous adventure. They eyed me hungrily. They knew the signs of the spiritually bankrupt, the worried, and the lonely better than a stage psychic. Walk-in, walk-up sex never interests me in the normal run of things. It's too much of a self-fooling to ring true, even at the bottom of a deep pit of sadness or drunkenness. But some liked the self-deception and revelled in what Wanchai had to offer. The bars were always buzzing. I sat down in the Devil's Advocate, and for no good reason had a bottle of white wine brought to me. It was all oaky vanilla and grapefruit, as mysterious as a trip to the bathroom. Thankfully, it was chilled nearly out of all recognition, and all the thrill you got was an icy kind of anesthesia in your throat and a rising sense of, well, things may not be all that bad after all. They even brought me an ice bucket, as they sensed a big spender and hoped one bottle wouldn't do. Two girls at the next table, Filipinas of course, were holding on for dear life to the remains of their cocktails. It must have been a slack night. "Why don't you join me? Your glasses look parched." They hopped over, and their skirts gripped their legs like cling film. They were young for the game, 18 going on 25, but it was hard to see how old they really were under all the makeup and fake jewels and stiff tied-back hair. And we went through the usual routine. Of course, they were on tourist visas, they were here visiting relatives, and things were hard in the Philippines, and they liked Hong Kong, but it was expensive. They wanted to find jobs because they were graduates and respectable, God-fearing, homely girls, and they didn't really want to look after children and cook and clean for a living. They wanted to earn money, and it was difficult for everyone from the Philippines, where money just couldn't be made, even by nice, attractive graduate teachers or nurses, with a horde of poor relatives, all suffering from incurable conditions. The rest of the family being struck by the effects of tsunamis, fires, divorces, road accidents, collapsed buildings, and vicious Chinese landlords. If there is a hell, the Filipinos will be taking the hats and coats at the entrance and telling you all about home, largely because they want everyone to know what they escaped from. And no need for a heaven for Filipinos. They're happy with a clean, crisp something, preferably a green card. Even though the ersatz wine was kicking in with a vengeance, I decided to take a rain check on a threesome or even a twosome. When faced with a choice between quiet desperation and surefire degradation with a brown fuzzy glow to it, I always choose to go on suffering. Perhaps I'm not an expatriate at all. The Aberdeen Tunnel was a blur, Deepwater Bay was a blare, and even the grim towers of Repulse Bay didn't sober me up. As I approached Stanley in the taxi, I wondered if I could close my eyes and smell corruption in the air, the same way you can sense chaos in Italy or order in Switzerland. I opened my eyes at last, as there wasn't any clue. Stanley isn't the place to sniff corruption. It was a peaceful kind of place, low-rise mainly, boring mainly, a ramshackle collection of villas, market stalls and attempts at provisions for tourists, a harmless little enclave where everyone gets on with their business and watch the bucks quietly roll in. In that sense, it was little different from anywhere else in Hong Kong. It just had better air and a lot less traffic. I jumped out of the taxi at the entrance to Watson's, and the market looked horrid and sinister and empty, the way only markets can when the people have gone. The old lady in a fluorescent striped overall was making a very late collection of cans and cardboard from the litter bins and didn't look up as I passed. A few cockroaches scuttled across my path, but I was too lazy to try and crush them tonight. It's marvellous how a bottle of wine can make you just peachy inside and even believe that the lowlife has a right to go on breathing. You might even greet a policeman or a district councillor in such a state of well-being. I managed to keep a respectable straight line up to the street doorway and found the keyhole at first attempt. The door slammed behind me as usual with its usual metallic clang. I opened up my own door, turned on the fluorescent light I always use to find the less glaring lamp, the more human illumination for my sordid little life, and got a sudden eyeful of green uniformed constabulary sitting on my sofa, looking as peaceful as folks at a drive-in movie when it's time to go home. But they weren't going home.